All right, welcome into On Texas Football. A little breaking news today, Tuesday afternoon. It's about 4:35 in the afternoon. I'm CJ Vogel, joined by Jerry Hamilton. Texas will be in the market for a new running backs coach, Chad Scott. No longer with the program. He was dismissed. Texas had a little parting of ways there with Steve Sarkisian and Chad Scott. That was first reported by Football Scoop. We can confirm that here at On Texas Football. We will field a number of your questions, of course, because look, Texas just signed 2 running backs a week ago. On top of that, there's been a lot of turnover in the class already that we expect for 2026. But Jerry, off the cuff, what are your initial reactions to Chad Scott being let go from the University of Texas?
Yeah, look, I mean, he turned down he had a bigger role at West Virginia that he turned down and left to be the running back coach at Texas. He was selected by Steve Sarkisian, right? So now a year into it, not even a full year, that Steve Sarkisian has moved on from Chad Scott. So look, I think the thing is sometimes it's just not a fit. It's not a mesh. Things just don't fit well together. Maybe when you get there, even though you go through an interview process, once you get there and staffs, it's just not a mesh. It's just not the fit that you thought it was when you make the hire initially. So my takeaway is that, look, I mean, whether it was what Sark said, whether it was Sark saw something from a coaching standpoint, from a meeting room standpoint, from it just wasn't a good fit and mesh standpoint, he's decided to make a move. Obviously, everybody's asking about Derek Cooper and Jet Walker. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Derek Cooper's currently on a practice field. Chaminade has a state championship game in 2 days against Cardinal Newman out of West Palm Beach. So he's been on a practice field since probably 2:30 today, with CJ. But I think sometimes things just aren't a fit or a mesh because Chad Scott's an experienced football coach. He's coached with a lot of really talented coaches over his tenure. So sometimes to me, it's just not a good fit.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of those instances. On top of that, look, he came over. He was hired in February, and now only about 10 months later, they depart both sides. But one of the big reasons that he ended up taking this job is because, look, there was coaching turnover at West Virginia, right? Neil Brown was fired. He was looking for a job on his own. Ended up, he gets the job at Texas as the running backs coach. And Neil Brown then follows. Well, now Neil Brown is off to North Texas as the head coach of the Mean Green. Does that mean Chad Scott's going up to Denton? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you, but it is interesting to see how coaches kind of follow one another whenever they have a good thing. Talking to your point, Jerry, that mesh, right? Who do you work well with? Who do you want to stick around with? So we'll monitor that as well. But we do have some questions in here I wanted to get to because Texas just signed Derek Cooper, right? They just signed Jet Walker, Jerry. Based off of what you know, how much will this affect those two? And how much was this relationship between Chad Scott and those two backs vital to their signing with the University of Texas?
I would say more so Jet Walker because Chad Scott had been recruiting him for a while, dating back to his time at West Virginia. So I would say relationship-wise, more impactful there. Look, we live in the NIL day and age. A guy like Derek Cooper is looking at Texas from my standpoint. Of course, he's been on a practice field. We'll wait and see if he has a comment on this. But he's been on a practice field. They get ready for a state championship game in 2 days. But look, Derek Cooper, I mean, a lot of these guys see opportunity. You know, everybody was like, I want to take people back. When Jabbar Juluke left to go to the NFL, what was everybody's reaction? Oh, no, Cedric Baxter and all these guys are going to transfer out. Nobody did. All the guys that were recruited by Jabbar Juluke stayed at Texas. So I think we have to remember we live in the NIL world where it's the University of Texas. There's great opportunity. A kid like Derek Cooper, you know what he's seen? He's seen CJ Baxter hit the portal, Jarrett Gibson, Ricky Stewart's no longer with the team. We'll see if that's all the attrition at running back. Trey Wisner has a decision to make, whether he's going to go pro or come back. Derek Cooper sees great opportunity at Texas. And I think as a fan base, everybody can't lose sight of that because Texas looks like a great situation for Derek Cooper right now. So just because a coach left, especially in the NIL day and age, doesn't mean these guys are automatically going to hit the door because everybody thought they were. The guys on the Texas roster were going to leave when Jabbar Juluke left, and none of them did.
Yeah, and I think in regards to Jet Walker as well, you mentioned the longer relationship with Chad Scott, and absolutely correct. He was a guy who had originally recruited him to West Virginia. He was actually committed to West Virginia before flipping over to Minnesota. But in regards to Jet Walker standing with the University of Texas. I look back to whenever I made the trip up to Georgetown about a month ago, Jerry, and he said, quite frankly, he said, look, my family loves Texas. When my grandmother passed away, they played the Eyes of Texas at her funeral. So, I don't think this is something that will deter either one at the moment, right, from going and attending the University of Texas. Both are expected to enroll in January when the semester begins once again. But look, this is a bit of a tumultuous time, right? All over the country. Teams that aren't in the playoff are dealing with, look, they just wrapped up their signing day. They're now having to deal with portal entrance, some of those exit interviews. On top of that, that goes to coaches as well. We talked about it a little bit off air, Jerry. But look, Texas has seen some coaching turnover multiple times over the last couple of seasons. This doesn't feel like it'll be the only one we'll see this off as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you just look every year, there's been at least 2 coaches that have changed, especially in the recent years, right? Last year, Terry Joseph and Tashard Choice. Obviously, that was staff. And, look, the special teams coach, but he wasn't obviously full-time on the field coach necessary like some other guys were. So there's 3, right? I mean, but that was a couple years ago. Then Bo Davis, obviously, and Jeff Choate was hired at Nevada. There's been change at wide receiver coach. So this won't be the last staff move. Who that is, when it happens, we'll see. But just going on Sark's in most coaching staffs, there's going to be turnover. It's going to go 2 ways, right, CJ? When you win a lot of games, some guys on your staff are going to get the opportunity to be head coaches, which you want as a head coach. Then there's going to be others that, maybe Sark feels a need for change, right? And then there's some others that might want to pursue NFL. There were guys that returned to the staff this year that had NFL opportunities last year, and one maybe turned it down. Another one, maybe the buyout was a differentiator and they'd had to take a pay cut. But there's guys that have had opportunities that actually came back as well. So there's going to be other change. We'll see how quickly that happens.
Yeah, and that's going to be the difficult process for Sarkisian as he then starts to juggle the portal in about a month. Do you have a replacement in mind by then? That's where I was going to go next, Jerry. I know, look, we're still looking at news that dropped about 30 minutes ago, so we're not going to have perfect replacement options or perfect hiring options for the running back positions. But I did want to get to this question because I know that we've seen a lot of questions, one about Jabbar Juluke out of Florida as well, who was just let go or at least parted ways with his staff out in Florida. Look, I think Kentucky right now is the team leading the way for him. He was a guy that had popped up a year ago when this job originally came open as well. I know that we're going to see some comments about Stan Drayton as well, who at the moment, Jerry, I don't believe has found a new home after the Penn State coaching staff kind of dissolved after their season as well. But right now, it's still pretty early when it comes to finding solutions. Ultimately, what do you look for in a running backs coach when it comes to this job and what this gig entails?
Well, mine is very simple. If Lane Kiffin doesn't retain Frank Wilson, go hire Frank Wilson. Period. End of discussion. If Frank Wilson is not retained by Lane Kiffin, and as of 6 hours ago, people from the LSU side were saying his Frank Wilson's future with the Tigers remains uncertain. Well, if he's available, you go get Frank Wilson. The state of Louisiana recruiting is going to be tougher with Lane Kiffin there. He also has time recruiting in Texas. Frank Wilson did when he was the head coach at UTSA. He's recruited every state in the Southeast. This one's pretty simple if Frank Wilson's not retained by LSU, but that doesn't mean that's what Sark's going to do. We're just talking an opinion, and I will always give an opinion.
Yeah.
What about you, CJ? Anybody you have your eyes on?
No, I think, look, Frank Wilson, I don't know if it gets much better than that, Jerry, but look, I think it's going to be very targeted once again. Look, you go back to the hirings that Texas made a year ago, right? The connections to Georgia, the connections to Florida. Chad Scott had both, right? I think that's something that Sarkisian will continue to prioritize. And look, Louisiana is just as important, especially with how, you look at that staff and what they hope to bring over to LSU. It's going to be very difficult to go back into Louisiana unless you have a for sure, big name out there. And look, Alan Clark is one of those. Now let's see if you can potentially double up. I think that's a fantastic option right there, Jerry. Go ahead.
I think the other thing that's interesting about this is timing, because I think Matthew Miller, 689, says maybe an NFL assistant like Baker. Not to say it's impossible to go get it back out of the portal without a running back coach, but it's definitely more difficult. When does the NFL regular season end? Not great timing.
No.
That's the problem with the NFL. Now, maybe it doesn't matter that much in portal recruiting, but I'm guessing it does. And so I think the timing of the hire is also going to be key here because, look, you have 22 days right now, 22 days until the Citrus Bowl. Then after that, 4 days until the portal opens. So I would be surprised if it's the NFL route just because of the timing of it. I'm not saying I'm right. But from a recruiting standpoint, in the portal, and coaches will be on the road evaluating in January before January Junior Day. So there is a timing mechanism here that could push this to a college coach, I would say.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I know that there were a number of coaches around the country that were eager and interested when this job was open a year ago. We'll be interested to see if that stays within the state or if Texas goes again and prioritizes territorial background, territorial, kind of recruiting chops there, Jerry. But all in all, before we get out of here, because look, we have another live stream coming up at 7 o'clock, and there's going to be a lot to recap with that one with myself, Jeff Howe, and Amanda Atwell. Jerry, final thoughts on Chad Scott leading the Texas program?
Yeah, look, I think best of luck to Chad Scott, and he'll find another job. He's been in college coaching a long time. I'm already looking ahead to the hire. Is what I'm doing. I don't think it's going to affect the guys in the class. I could be 100% wrong. I've been wrong before. I just don't see that. Not in the NIL era, in the opportunity era. So I'm really looking at the next running back coach, who that could be, and what could that mean for Texas? Now I'll say this from a recruiting standpoint, I don't think there's rainmakers anymore. So I think the NIL has changed the rainmaker status in recruiting. NIL is the rainmaker. Let's be real. But I think what Tashard Choice brought to Texas, yes, he was great in relationships, but he brought to Texas recruiting in Georgia, recruiting in Florida. So I think there's an element of Kenny Baker, tremendous young football coach. Yes, his dad was a longtime head coach in Georgia. He helped in Georgia. He's helped a lot in recruiting in Georgia. So I look for Southeast ties, maybe a couple of states that are impacted by that potentially more than a rainmaker status. What could help Texas battle, whether that's in Louisiana, whether that's in Georgia, whether that's in Florida, whether that's in all of them. Jabbar Juluke, there you go.
Yeah, so this just came out from Matt Zenitz over at CBS Sports and 24/7 Sports. The impression is Jabbar Juluke is now under the at least a strong possibility for the running backs coach opening at the University of Texas. Earlier today, he was linked to the opening job over at Kentucky. Florida and that new staff did not retain Juluke. So look, this is a big one because guess again, Jerry, guess who's he tied to? Jaden Ball, obviously big one. That's not a guarantee that Jaden Ball is now going to jump in the portal and follow. Right. That's not a guarantee. But I did want to go real quick through his coaching history because you mentioned Louisiana as a spot.
Yes.
That is very intriguing. He was previously at Louisiana Tech from 2013 to 2015, LSU in 2016, in which he had both Leonard Fournette and Darius Geis, if you remember that one, Jerry. Yep. He spent a year up at Texas Tech and then 3 years back under Billy Napier from 2018 to 2021, produced 2 NFL backs at the time, and then 3 seasons at Florida, Trevor Etienne being the most notable, and, of course, Jaden Ball, who I think we all consider to be a very talented back in the SEC. So if this is a name that Texas has circled at the moment, and if Sarkisian kind of goes the route of what we've seen with CDC, where you don't make a move at a position unless you have that replacement already in set, look, I think you check off a couple boxes here when it comes to state of Florida, state of Louisiana, and a guy who's been able to produce and develop.
Yeah. Again, outside of Frank Wilson, Jabbar Juluke probably has the most ties in New Orleans as a coach. So I think there's something there. Obviously, Juluke has also recruited the state of Florida, Georgia, all around. And by the way, and as evaluator, because Jaden Ball was not at the top of Georgia's radar. He was on their radar, but he wasn't at the top when he came out of the Atlanta area. really strong evaluator as well is Jabbar Juluke. So if it ends up being him, and that, again, what CJ said, that doesn't guarantee Jaden Boss coming to Texas at all. But Jabbar Juluke, I look at more from how can he help Texas in the future. Those Louisiana ties, those state of Florida ties, recruited the state Atlanta. And, look, Texas lost something when Tashard Choice left in those areas in recruiting. And I think that Jabbar Juluke, if he ends up being the guy, can ideally replace that. Look, he was a head coach at Endicott for 9 years too, by the way.
Yeah, they got some talent over there, huh, Jared?
15 D1 signees this year. 15. So he's as well connected as anybody outside of Frank Wilson in the Pelican State. And again, he's put in a lot of work in the Sunshine State, in the state of Georgia. He has some really good running backs that he's evaluated in high school that have gone on to be really good players. So I could see that being a guy that is highly targeted. Him or Frank Wilson, I think would be home runs for Texas, honestly.
Well, good deal, Jerry. Thank you very much. Matthew, behind the scenes, thank you. Again, make sure to tune in around 7:15. We'll have the Tuesday night live stream with myself, Jeff Howe, and Amanda Atwell. A lot to recap. More portal entries, coaches on the move as well. Jerry, it's a lot going on in the month of December. You thought maybe when the regular season ended, we'd be able to coast down. Not the case. So we'll have you covered here at On Texas Football. Make sure to get over to the website and join the community over there. Use the code OTFOG for an annual subscription of $39.95. But that will do it for at least this update. We'll see when the next one is, Jerry. But thank you very much. And for everybody that tuned in, you'll have a good Tuesday night. See you next time. Hook 'em.